I wanted to start today by reminding you that I have been recording many of the lessons that I've taught since the very beginning of the year. And these lessons are all stored on my YouTube channel, but probably easier for you to access through Teams. So if you go to the Reader's Workshop channel of Teams, you can follow through, if you go all the way up to the top, follow through the whole school year and see most of the lessons. I have had technical problems along the way, but most of the school lessons are there. The same with Writer's Workshop. I have recorded a lot of the lessons, and after I store them on YouTube, I put the link on the Writer's Workshop channel, and you can go back and you can review all of the lessons that you missed. So if you've been absent a lot, you might want to go back and review. If you are still struggling to do this work, you may want to go back and review and perhaps practice some of the skills we've learned. Because we all know that we've had some problems with engagement, we've had some problems with distractions, we've had some problems with effort. Roman, please put that away. Okay, so in light of the fact that we are having problems with effort and that some of you are not participating in class, I'm starting a new practice of which you will be turning in the work that you do during the workshop. So for those of you who do the work I ask you every day with effort, you're going to be fine. But for those of you who kind of bluff your way through Writer's Workshop by looking like you're doing the work, or who put your notebook away before you've actually done the work, or falling behind because you're so distracted and thinking of other things, you're going to start feeling some of the pressure. You're going to be squirming in your seat. Not necessarily a bad thing, because when we squirm in our seat, that's our learning opportunity. Okay, so I just wanted to point out our board configuration here. We have shifted into writing boot camp mode. What that means is that we've kind of slowed down and paused our Reader's Workshop, and we're double blocking our writing. We are less than 6 weeks away from the writing test. And as many of you will see when I pass back your writing tomorrow, because I've scored all of it, when I pass it back to you tomorrow, many of you will see that you perhaps did not do as well as you thought you did, which is a good sign for you to pay attention. We're going to be skilling and drilling this as much as possible in order to ensure that we're doing the best that we can, okay? But I need everybody to give effort, okay? Now, I've created a poster, and I'll move it so we can see it. I've created this poster, and I've started to write down the things that we have learned so far in our FSA writing lessons. And just to review, remember when we get the text set or when we get the test booklet, the very first thing we do is to find the prompt. We don't read the text without knowing why we're reading it. And as we practiced the other day, a little bit in our notebooks, before we read anything, before we move away from that page, we're going to write a thesis statement. Now, that's important because sometimes when you start reading the text set, your mind can go off on a different tangent. We want to make sure that we're responding to the prompt exactly. I was actually surprised at the number of people who were completely off prompt. And I think that was because you weren't doing this. So we open up the text set, we find the writing prompt, we read it. And then right there on that page, we write a thesis. Now, if it's informative, we write one thesis. But let's not forget that if it's opinion, we have to write two, one for each side of the argument. But right now in our boot camp, we are focusing only on informative essays. And so what I've done is I have pulled some prompts that we're going to write thesis statements to. So if you could go ahead, give your attention up here. Let me make sure that I get this on the right source. I'm going to teach you step by step how you need to respond to the prompt. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to read the prompt. And if you can't see it from where you're sitting, you're welcome to stand up. I will read it out loud. The passages you read were about drones. Write an explanatory essay in which you describe how drones could change our lives in the future. Okay, so the first step in writing a thesis statement to go with a prompt is to identify the important words. What are the key words in this prompt? So take a moment, and on your paper, I want you to write the key words. Put the number 1 in the margin. What are the key words in this prompt? Now, if this was your test booklet, you could definitely just underline them, but I'm going to have you write them on your paper. You're not writing the whole prompt. You're only writing the key words. Now, once we've identified the keywords, the next step in our process is to use those keywords to write a thesis statement. So you don't have to do anything except to adjust your keywords and make it a sentence. So look down at the keywords you wrote. Turn it into a thesis statement. Okay, so let's check. Galila, what were the important key words that you chose to jot on your paper?
Lives, future, and change.
Say it again.
Lives, future, and change.
I heard future. Get up here and highlight it. What was the other one? Lives. Okay, that was the one I was having a hard time. I noticed when I was looking, some of you were paying attention to keywords, and your focus was more on the organization. So some of you said explain, describe. Those were the keywords that you used. But those keywords, while they're very important to know because it's going to give you your task, they're not necessarily going to be in your thesis. So we know we need to have, I would add one more word. What would you add, Haley? Drones. Okay, I would add that because obviously that's our topic. And so how could you turn that into a thesis statement? I'm going to let Galila go since she started this out. Go ahead.
Drones can change our lives
Drones could change our lives in the future. I want you to notice, you could very easily have just capitalized this D. Drones could change our lives in the future. So notice, first of all, there are no details here. We can't include details because we haven't read the text set yet. So reading and writing your thesis, reading the prompt and writing your thesis before you read the text set is a really good tip. It's a really smart practice because your thesis statement should not have any details in it. So remember what we did, okay? We read the prompt. We identified important words, key words, that would tell us what our task is. And we turned those words into a thesis statement. So if you don't have this written down for number 1 yet, you need to write it down. Drones could change our lives in the future. Right from the prompt, no doubt in the reader's mind that you responded directly to the prompt and you are not off prompt. So drones could change our lives in the future. Drones is capitalized. There's a period at the end. Remember that we always make sure that our thesis statement and our main ideas are written in complete sentences. Why is that important? Well, because in the column of language and conventions, where you can earn 2 points on your essay, if you do not write in complete sentences, you get a 0. Because in order to get a 1, you have to be able to form a sentence, which is why we practice all the time in our paragraph editing, which is why we practice all the time in our skills block every day. Quizzes every week. Skill and drill until we get it. We need to recognize that in our writing. Okay, so let's do another one. This one you're going to do on your own. All right, so remember the first thing we do is we go to the writing prompt and we read it. The readings talked about unwanted snakes. Write an informative essay in which you explain how unwanted snakes affect the places in which they live. Use information from the passages in your essay. Okay, so remember the steps. The first thing you want to do is identify the key words. And we know we're thinking about how we're going to make a thesis statement. Those are the key words that we're looking for. Once you identify them, go ahead and write a thesis statement on your paper. If you could please put a number 2 there. So I know it's number 2 that you're responding to. Once you've written your thesis statement, make sure you read it. Is it a sentence? It shouldn't sound like a title. It needs to be a sentence. And because it's a sentence, the first word is capitalized. And because it's a sentence, it ends in a period. The readings talked about unwanted snakes. Write an informative essay in which you explain how unwanted snakes affect the places in which they live. Use information from the passages in your essay. just one thing I want to call your attention to. I've noticed it. I just went through all of the papers next door, and I'm noticing some of you are doing it. Some of you are tempted to end your sentence with the word in. It is informal writing. You do not want to end a sentence with the word in. So you need to look at where they place the sentence in, or the word in the prompt. And revise your thesis statement so your last word in that sentence is not a preposition. It's not the word in. This is formal writing. It's not conversational writing. It's not informal writing. So you don't want to end your thesis statement with the word in. Pretty basic, pretty easy so far. Let's go on to number 3. If you could put the number 3 there, I would appreciate it. Some of these are going to look familiar to you because we did these the other day. Problem was, a lot of you did not bother to do it, and your notebooks were blank. So we're going to do them again. If you did do the work when you were supposed to do the work, you're welcome to look at your notebook. Okay, next prompt is on this side right here. The readings talked about the problems that polar bears face and what is being done to help save the polar bears. Write an informative essay in which you explain what types of problems the polar bears face and the solutions that are being proposed to solve these problems. Use information from the passages in your essay. Now, before you jump in and just grab a bunch of words in the middle of this prompt, I want to warn you that this prompt is a little bit more difficult to write a thesis statement on. The previous 2 were very simple, and you were just able to grab word for word part of a sentence, part of the prompt, and come up with a thesis. This is a little bit more complicated. So avoid the temptation to make that your pattern and to just copy down part of this. Think about what they're asking. Look for the key words. The readings talked about the problems that polar bears face and what is being done to help save the polar bears. Explain what types of problems that polar bears face and the solutions that are being proposed to solve these problems. So what kind of a text structure do they want your essay written in? ADK? Problem solution. So we'll be using a lot of those key words to write our essay in that type of form. So we're going to see in our body paragraphs, first you'll be describing the problem, and in that same body paragraph, you'll be describing the solution that people are proposing to solve that problem. So obviously in this case, you're hoping you can find 3 problems. You're hoping you can find 3 solutions. So when you finish writing your thesis and you start to read and annotate the text and you're wearing the lens for your task, you're specifically looking for those types of things. Go ahead and write your thesis statement on your paper. When you think you have it written, I want you to go ahead and I want you to reread it. Ask yourself, is it a sentence? Does it make sense what I've just written down? Did I start my sentence with a word that's capitalized? Did I end my sentence with a period? Is it one sentence? If it's two, you need to create a compound sentence. You've learned how to do that. So if your thesis statement is two separate sentences, you need to turn that into a compound sentence. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds to finish up, and we're going to move on to the next one. Remember, you're turning this paper in. Number 4. Okay, let's go through our steps again. Remember, we go straight to the prompt. We read the prompt. The passages you read were about volcanoes. Write an essay in which you explain how people's lives can be affected by volcanoes. Use information from the sources in your essay. Identify the key words in your task. Turn those key words into a thesis statement. That is a sentence that begins with a capital letter that ends in a period. Passages you read were about volcanoes. Write an essay in which you explain how people's lives can be affected by volcanoes. Use information from the sources in your essay. Remember, we don't want to add any information that is not in the prompt because this is the thesis. Guys, this part should take you less than 5 minutes. Going to the prompt, writing your thesis, and getting to start reading, that should take you less than 5 minutes. That's why we're practicing skill and drill, skill and drill, skill and drill. We need to be able to do this quickly and accurately in order to be successful. Okay. Next one. You should recognize this. The passages you read were about the histories of hamburgers and tacos. Write an essay in which you explain how the histories of these two different foods are alike and different. Looking at the language in this prompt, what is the text structure they want you to write your essay in? Sean? Okay, but there's actually a name for that. What is the name for that kind of a text structure? Danny? Compare and contrast. And that's just a difference in vocabulary. How are they alike and different? They're asking us to write our essay in the text structure of compare and contrast. So within each body paragraph, we're going to talk about a way that those both are alike, but the elaboration in there, the details that we're going to support it with are going to be how they're different. So the main idea is going to be how they're alike, but the details are going to be about how they're different. your name on it and your heading. The subject is writing, and you can join us wherever you are. Yes, ma'am. Yes, definitely. If you run out of room on the front of your paper, please go ahead and write on the back. We do have 7 of these, so try not to skip too many lines. And again, you should notice that this is familiar. We've already done this. And if you actually participated in class, you have it written down. Once you think you have a thesis, read it in your head. First question to ask, does this make sense? Then you need to ask, is this a sentence? Then you need to look at the very first word in the sentence and make sure it's capitalized. Then you need to look at the end of the sentence and see if you gave it punctuation. It should have a period. A thesis should not be a question mark. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. This, I believe, is number 6. Again, this one is a little bit more challenging. We haven't seen anything like this. Your science class is researching medical concerns in sports. Write an informative essay to present to your class about the importance of studying concussions. So remember the steps. We're reading the prompt. We're identifying key words and phrases that need to be included in our thesis. And then we're turning those key words and phrases into a sentence that makes sense. Is a complete sentence and is capitalized and punctuated appropriately. So we want to make sure that our thesis, we start out on the right foot with our thesis. It's a complete sentence. It makes sense, properly capitalized and punctuated. And again, because we're only reading the prompt before we write the thesis, we're going to keep those details out of it. We don't know any of the details. We can't add details to it. We also know right now that our focus is only on informative, so we're only writing one thesis. But we need to make sure that we don't have any opinion words in there. Okay, and let's move on to number 7. This is our last one. Oh, maybe not. Yes, that is our last one. Okay, the readings talked about animals in the classroom. Write an essay in which you explain how pets in the classroom can affect students. Use information from the passages in your essay. Okay, so stop for a second. Remember, our first step is to look for keywords and phrases that can and should be included in our thesis statement. Once we identify what those are, we're going to turn those keywords and phrases into a sentence. Based on the language of the prompt, what is the text structure that they want us to write in? Emma? That's our key word to tell us that this is going to be a cause and effect text structure. Remember, we practice this so that we can do it with automaticity when we take a test. We want to be able to do it completely right away. I'm going to give you about another minute to finish, and then I'm going to ask you to turn your paper into the basket.